Elon Musk was taken on a tour of the kibbutz by Benjamin Netanyahu, a man who has weaponized anti-Semitism to shield any criticism of his genocide, using a man who has actually spread anti-Semitic ideas for PR and propaganda. And trust me, this is exactly what it is. Propaganda. Look at this baby crib that's been perfectly placed outside in the middle with bullet holes from a gun that Hamas does not even have. And if we look at data from Israel's own newspaper, Haaretz, no Israeli aged 0 to 3 was killed on October 7th. Somehow the world keeps repeating the lie about Hamas killing babies so that we look the other way when we actually see thousands of dead babies in Palestine. Just yesterday, a video emerged from Al Nasser Hospital of premature babies whose bodies were decomposing because Israel left them there. Remind me again, who really are the baby killers? Remember, every single Israeli accusation is actually a confession. Aditya Raj spread this lie that went around the world that Hamas cut open the belly of a pregnant woman and took out the fetus. Something that was fact-checked. Actual incident happened in Lebanon when Israeli forces ripped out a fetus from a pregnant woman's belly and cut it in two. Just recently, I saw a video of a burnt fetus in Palestine. These are things that are actually happening. They don't need to make up stories. Another lie that's being told is about Hamas baking a baby. Remember, every Israeli accusation is actually a confession. This was done by Zionist forces in 1948 when they ordered baker Hussein al-Sharif to throw his own son into the burning oven. And when he refused, the soldiers proceeded to throw both of them in there. In 2015, when Zionist forces committed an arson attack in which a toddler was burned to death, Ali Saad Dawabshi, far-right extremist groups in Israel used to chant things like, "Where's Ali? Ali's on the grill." And again, Haaretz has printed a list of the names of the people who've been killed in Israel, and no one was aged 0 to 3 on October 7th. An Israeli official even went on Mehdi Hassan's show and said our original count was 1400, but we've reduced it to 1200 because we've realized many of the burnt bodies were not Israeli. They were actually Hamas.
Bodies that were so badly burnt, we thought they were ours. In the end, apparently, they were Hamas terrorists.
Already know that the burnt houses we see in the kibbutz are from Israeli tanks shelling them. A video has emerged of a young Israeli soldier who admits that fact as well, saying her senior told her to use the tanks against these houses. And when she asked her, "Are there any civilians there?" the senior said, "I don't know, just shh." We've already discussed what happened on October 7th, but in this video, we're going to discuss the many lies told by the IDF. Myth number 23 in our series is that the IDF can be trusted. Number 1, Israel lied about Hamas beheading 40 babies. No evidence was found. Even the White House said no evidence was presented, whereas we see multiple evidence of Israel killing premature babies in Palestine. Number 2, Israel lied about there being mass sexual assaults on October 7th. The news channels who reported it also retracted the news, saying no evidence was found, whereas there is numerous evidence of Palestinian women and children who have been repeatedly sexually assaulted in Israeli prisons by Israeli forces. Number 3, they posted a fake video about the Al-Ahli strike as evidence, something that they deleted themselves. Then they posted another video that was debunked. Number 4, they posted an audio as evidence again for the Al-Ahli strike, an audio that was thoroughly debunked, but since then they have continued posting these phone calls that clearly sound fake. They lied about a Hamas commander being in an ambulance that they bombed. Israel has a history of bombing hospitals and ambulances, something that we've discussed in previous videos. If you feel something is not being addressed in this video, it's probably because we've addressed it in previous videos in this series. The Hamas Command and Control Center was below the Shifa hospital. They even presented us with 3D presentations for it. Nothing was found. They posted a video that's cut and edited that goes from a drone shot to a person holding a camera, and they tried passing that off as the same video. Israel said that there was to be a humanitarian corridor for people to evacuate from. Then they shot at and bombed that corridor. There is so much propaganda coming from Israel. They've created a fake website called Hamas.com. And this is nothing new. The IDF has a history of lying. When they killed journalist Shireen Abu Akleh, they first claimed the Palestinians did it and later admitted that, yeah, it was us. In 1996, Israel committed a massacre in South Lebanon at a UN compound. They first denied it and only admitted it when a videotape emerged of a UN soldier showing that Israel deliberately targeted and shelled the UN compound. Needs to stop trusting everything that is being said by Israel and do their jobs as journalists and independently verify every single thing that's being said, rather than just giving a platform to Israeli officials to spew any lies that they want for ours. And at this point, Israel knows that it can get away with anything. It bombed the Jabalia refugee camp, saying a Hamas commander was there. No commander was found, no name was given, yet they bombed it again. And then they bombed a school right next to it. Where is the accountability for any of these war crimes? Where are the journalists asking Israel, what's the evidence for Hamas being there? What was the name of the Hamas commander that you were targeting? What is the evidence that you are presenting to justify bombing schools? We are somehow meant to believe that Hamas planned October 7th for 2 years and Israel was clueless about it. Israel had no intelligence of where Hamas was, what they were planning for. On October 7th, hundreds of Palestinian resistance fighters were able to go into Israel, but somehow now Israel knows exactly where every single Hamas member is and they're bombing them. This is not precision bombing. Again, trust people when they say things. Israel has been clear about their strategy. They're not going for precision. They're going for damage. They're targeting all the civilians of Palestine. Just last night, Israel's military invaded the Jenin refugee camp in the West Bank, where Hamas is not in power. Israel has successfully used the media and propaganda to confuse people into thinking they do not know where they stand. There should be nothing confusing about standing against a genocide. At this point, Palestinian parents are carrying the limbs of their dead children in multiple plastic bags. And there are people out there who are saying we cannot trust them because the information is coming out of Gaza, because the information is coming out of somewhere where Hamas is. This is the whole idea about if your skin is brown, you're an assumed terrorist. The media would like you to think that every single thing said by a Palestinian is a lie, whereas everything that is said by the IDF is taken to be gospel. Whereas I've shown you that IDF has a history of lying about everything, has a history of promoting propaganda, yet they're not questioned over it. At this point, the media is pretty much complicit in the genocide. Look at this cartoon posted by the Washington Post. They deleted it, but the damage was done. What is this if not justification for Israel killing over 8,000 children? Are we just meant to wake up every single day and watch videos of children with their heads blown off and do nothing? People are seeing the war for what it is, which is why you're seeing people out on the streets in their hundreds of thousands putting pressure on their governments, and the lies will not fly anymore. Joe Biden even said that the Hamas Ministry of Health cannot be trusted. And let's address that myth. Myth number 24, the death count. If you are to say that if we can't trust the IDF, we can't trust Hamas, fine. This is the 4th video in our series. Everything that I've presented, the source for any of it was not Hamas. They're independent human rights organizations that have verified that the numbers coming from the Ministry of Health and the numbers that they have, there is no discrepancy in that. In fact, human rights organizations have said that the death count is likely to be a lot more because thousands are still stuck under the rubble in Gaza. These are not just numbers, these are human beings. These are people who had their lives ahead of them. These are people who had dreams. And the Ministry of Health in Gaza has published a list with the names of the people who have died. Don't trust their numbers. Look at the names. Look at the lists. Look at independent organizations. Euromed Monitor has put the death count at 20,000. And Israel has no issues trusting the death count. Israel is celebrating the death count on their media channels. But somehow we're told through propaganda that the death count cannot be trusted. They're running with it. In fact, Israel's numbers are higher than the numbers presented by the Ministry of Health in Gaza. So who should we trust? Our own eyes? The list of names? Common sense? The idea that if you drop bombs 2 or 3 times the size of Hiroshima on one of the most densely populated areas in the world, tens and thousands of people are likely to be injured. Do we trust all of that? Or do we trust Joe Biden? Somebody whose own White House said that he lied about seeing pictures of beheaded babies. No pictures were presented by Israel. Euromed Monitor also said that Israel has been selling and harvesting organs from dead Palestinians, something that they've been doing for years. Israel is an international hub for organ harvesting. These colonial ideas that depending on the color of your skin, you're a presumed terrorist are things that we need to unlearn. A white man shot at 3 Palestinians in Vermont. And now the media is painting him as somebody with mental health struggles. It's only white people who are allowed to have mental health struggles. Black and brown people are always presumed terrorists. I've had depressions for years. I've never shot 3 people. The death and destruction in Palestine is undeniable, which is why you're seeing so much propaganda to make you think that what you're seeing is not actually happening. There's also this disgusting wild trend that's being promoted by propagandists on Twitter called Pallywood, which is claiming that all the deaths that you see are the work of makeup artists and VFX. Why doesn't Hollywood just simply hire everybody from Palestine if they do such a phenomenal job with their makeup? Anybody who's seen all the videos from Palestine, and you're free to go on Twitter and search those videos and see for yourself, you will testify to their veracity if you see a few of them. And the people who are promoting this trend, just go through the videos they've posted and go through all the fact checks that have been done on those videos to show you that these people are lying. And some of the lies are simply so stupid that it's honestly astonishing that I even need to address it. Like the pictures being juxtaposed of the boy who was released by Israel, showing that his arms did not have a plaster around them when Israel released him, and then he had a plaster later. If you listen to the interview, he says that his arms were broken by Israel in prison. There is ample evidence. There are independent news stories of Palestinians being tortured in Israeli prisons. Israel itself has shown videos and released pictures of them torturing Palestinian prisoners and celebrating that. They even posted a video of a tank dragging a Palestinian on the street. This is not something that they hide. The boy said his arms were broken by Israel. They did not give him any medical assistance, so why would he have a plaster when Israel released him? It is when he reached the Red Cross being an independent international organization, unless you also think they're involved in this entire fake Truman Show reality building, they're the ones who put on the plaster. This is why he has a plaster after he left the Red Cross, and he did not have a plaster when Israel released them. How is this difficult to understand? It really is not, but it just serves your agenda, so you share it without using the 2 brain cells that you have left. An Israeli diplomat also tried spreading this Pallywood lie, and the evidence that he presented was actually from a short film being shot in Lebanon. He deleted the video, but propagandists picked it up and kept sharing it. This is what happens when you don't look at fact, when you don't look at reality, when you have a worldview about things, and anything that conforms to that, you're so desperate to believe it that you share it without even doing a simple Google image search. You just want it to be true because it serves your agenda. Israel even spread an entire misinformation campaign about a Palestinian content creator, and the crux of that campaign was the fact that he looks like somebody who was in the ICU in Palestine. They're not the same person. There is data on who the other person is, and this is a Palestinian content creator. So the fact that in one of his music videos he's dressed as a Hamas commander does not mean that he's a Hamas commander. I think most people realize the difference in between content, acting, and the person existing. But it serves their propaganda to present it as him being a crisis actor. So that gets shared around the world without anybody even bothering to Google him or to watch his videos on YouTube to see why has pictures in these different roles. Here's another picture that went viral of people claiming it's from Gaza. It's a Halloween costume from Thailand. Next time you see a picture like this, right click, search the image on Google. It literally takes you 30 seconds to verify before sharing fake news. The love of God, see through the vile agenda of people and look at what they're trying to sell you. It's hate. There are people vile enough to even claim that the dead bodies that you see are not babies, they're dolls. Go through the videos. I dare you, go through the videos for a few minutes. I'm sure you can't do it for a few hours. Then come back and tell me that. Honestly, how can people be this vile? Israel's official Twitter account was caught lying about this as well. Remember, every single Israeli accusation is actually a confession. If there is Hollywoodization of this war on one side, it's on Israel's side. Here is a clip from Fox News where Israel and the IDF claim that they've arrested a Hamas commander, But when the cameras go away, the same person is seen returning to the soldiers and changing comfortably. Here is Israel staging a scene and being fact-checked by doctors around the world telling them that this is not what deoxygenated blood looks like. You see the same difference in the hostages who've been released. There's a reason Israel is not allowing the released hostages to talk to the media. They're training them on what to say and what not to say. Here is Hamas, who have leaked a letter that a released Israeli hostage wrote to them, thanking them, telling them how grateful she was for the love that they showed to her child. Whereas Palestinian hostages speak about being tortured and assaulted before their release. Their loved ones who went to receive them were also shot at in many instances. Here is the deputy mayor of Jerusalem justifying that, saying that people should not have been celebrating if they do not want to get shot at. The reason some people don't care is because you've been taught that brown and black people can only be terrorists. Here is former US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo spreading that same lie that every brown person is an assumed terrorist. Let me lay down some facts for you, Mr. Pompeo. Maybe you'll see reality through your racism. Facts are that most of the people who've been released by Israel are teenagers, a vast majority of whom have never been convicted of a single crime, yet were languishing in prisons for years. Mr. Pompeo, you have a lot more experience than I do. Please let me know by which law can you keep a person without framing any charges, without granting them their fundamental right to a fair trial. These are your terrorists. If you actually go through the stories of the people who've been released, they're harrowing. Many of them were children. There was a child, half of his skull is missing. Here's the story of Isra Jabis. Her car had an electrical fire, and when half of her body was burning, she tried to seek help. Instead, the Israeli forces pushed her back into the burning car and sentenced her to 11 years in prison. We're meant to believe that just because you call a building a prison, the thousands that you shove inside it are all presumed to be terrorists? The Special Rapporteur to the United Nations has said that since 1967, Israel has detained over 800,000 Palestinians, tens of thousands of children. Some of the Palestinian children who've been released by Israel were 4 and 5 years old when they were arrested. These are your terrorists. The crime of throwing a stone comes with a 20-year prison sentence in Israel. And many a times, those charges are also fabricated. Just like the charges of stabbing have been fabricated in many of the cases if you actually look at the case files. Israel has a thing called administrative detention, in which they can keep Palestinians in prison without a charge, without any trial. Even today, 7,000 people are just languishing in prisons without any charges being framed against them. Is this justice? Today's exchange, 3 Palestinian women and 30 Palestinian children were released. Nobody is really asking why Israel is keeping so many Palestinian children in prison, despite the fact that there's so many news stories of children being sexually assaulted in Israeli prisons. Maybe it's just a coincidence that Israel is also a haven for pedophiles around the world. This is not a conspiracy. Look up the news stories. Look at the stories of the prisoners who've been released. This is a story of Ahmed Mansara, who was 13 when he was arrested, despite him having mental health problems. Any lawyer around the world will tell you that forced confessions are not admissible in court. Yet these people do not get a fair trial in Israel. Fadi Quran tells a harrowing story of how he was picked up on the charge of throwing a stone, and then a random 13-year-old child was picked up and thrown into the prison van and told that he needs to confess that he saw Fadi throw a stone. And Fadi has dealt with hundreds of cases like this where children are forced to confess. Somehow we're meant to believe that every single Palestinian child is a terrorist. And the evidence propagandas present, or the argument that they make, is indoctrination. But why is that argument not made on both sides? Because the indoctrination is definitely happening on both sides.
השנים הקרובות. מה יש שם עכשיו על בית המקדש? אז מה יקרה עם המסגד? יישבר? אם מכן פגש בשנה האחרונה ילד ערבי?
איפה פגשת ילד ערבי? ליד הכותל.
ודיברת איתו?
לא, הוא דחף אותי, אבל לא הלך.
ומה קורה כשאתם רואים ילד ערבי? מה אתם מרגישים?
רגשות זעם.
זעם? מה קורה כשאתם פוגשים ילד חילוני?
מרחם עליו שגם לא חרדים.
למה אתה מרחם עליו שלא נולד חרדי? מה הוא מפסיד?
הוא לא הולך בדרך כלל.
כשאתם חושבים על ירושלים בעוד 10 שנים, כולם חרדים?
לא כולם חרדים. חלק ערבים, חלק
כולם יהודים ויש גם ערבים שהם עבדים.
יהיה משיח, הבנתי, כן, מה אתה אומר?
שמלחמה כל הערבים ימותו, וחלק מהם יהיו עבדים.
Don't ever let anyone make you think that this is normal. This is not normal. Israel is the only country in the world to systematically and repeatedly prosecute children in military courts. There are things that are said to ensure apathy, to make the world look the other way, to make you think that it is complicated or you do not know enough to take a stand. You do. There are enough conversations that are happening now around the fact that there are definite plans to exploit Gaza's natural resources. There are talks of an alternative to Suez Canal that will be built that will go through Gaza. There are talks of oil being found offshore in Gaza that will be exploited once Gaza is annexed. This has happened repeatedly around the world where resources have been exploited and the victims have been silenced, and you are told that it's complicated. And this is the last myth in this video, something that people say which makes no sense. When they look at the death and destruction, when they look at dead children, they say, war is ugly. Myth number 25. Well, war is undeniably ugly, but where have you seen videos of parents carrying the limbs of their dead children in multiple plastic bags before? Over 20,000 people have died. Over 8,000 people have died. Close to 2 million people have been displaced. Entire neighborhoods have been wiped out. Entire bloodlines have been eradicated. They're building mass graves. War is ugly. But in 2023, as a race, as a species, this should be unacceptable to all of us. There have been other wars recently. But where else have you seen UN compound schools and hospitals bombed and besieged like this? Israel has killed more journalists in 2 months than all the parties combined in 6 years during World War II. This is not normal. This is not like any other war happening around the world. Israel has killed more UN workers than Hamas commanders at this point. War is ugly, but even by the minimum metrics of humanity, of basic humanity that we've set for ourselves, Israel is falling way short of that even during a war. Russia and Ukraine have been at war for close to 2 years. Close to 500 Ukrainian children have been killed by Russia in close to 2 years. In less than 2 months, over 8,000 Palestinian children have been killed by Israel. Funny how Hillary Clinton sees them as war crimes when Russia attacks a hospital. If we set all our emotions aside, if we set all our morality, all our humanity aside, the countries of the world, the people of the world came together, sat together, and made laws of war. Laws that every single country around the world is bound by. But somehow Israel seems to be exempt from all international humanitarian law, from all international criminal law, from all UN resolutions even. Using white phosphorus in civilian neighborhoods is not allowed as per international humanitarian law. Israel does it. Countries, even during a war, are bound to minimize civilian casualties. Israel does not do it. No other country is allowed to do this. Even the United States of America cannot get away with this. International courts and the United Nations has repeatedly held Israeli settlements to be illegal. United Nations resolutions repeatedly tell Israel to stop building those settlements. Israel doesn't care. It continues building those settlements. Taking prisoners without any possibility of a trial or any charges is illegal. Israel doesn't care. Apartheid is illegal. Israel doesn't care. Get that what is happening in Palestine exposes the sham that is human rights and rules-based world order and the United Nations. But if we look at the history of it, people from around the world, representatives from around the world have repeatedly sat together and come up with common sense solutions to what is happening in Israel-Palestine over the years. The only reason none of it gets implemented is because the United States vetoes it. Even right now, the world wants a ceasefire. The world has agreed to a ceasefire. The only reason is the United States of America and their power to veto anything against Israel. Most basic rule of war that the world has set is to differentiate between combatants and non-combatants. And Israel does not do that when it's targeting civilians. It's deliberately targeting civilians. It's telling you that it's deliberately targeting civilians. We've discussed their genocidal statements in the previous video at length. Cutting off food, water, fuel for 2 million people is collective punishment. It's against international humanitarian law. If any other country was doing it, they would be brought before the International Court of Justice. We would call them war criminals. If Russia was doing in Ukraine what Israel is doing in Palestine, the US would have sent its military against Russia right now. And we would have been told how anti-human rights Russia is. And the people of the world see it for what it is right now. This is why you see hundreds of thousands of people out on the streets. And as convinced as I am of the sun coming out tomorrow, I'm convinced that Palestine will be free. Because the people whose will cannot be defeated by bombs, who stand undefeated and undeterred in front of the military might of the world, that human will cannot be defeated. And this is why we need to stand with them. We need to stand with the olive trees, not with the people burning them. And the olive tree is a great metaphor for the people of Palestine, because olive trees do not wither. They do not bow when there is a lot of wind. They do not die when there is winter. They belong to the land, and that is where they will stay. That is what they are fighting for. And in their fight, the people of the world see their own suffering as well, which is why they're standing with them. Which is why you see the native populations, the indigenous populations of America, of Australia, standing with Palestine, because they had their lands robbed from them. They know what it is like. And as much as it seems like it's the Joe Bidens and the Rishi Sunoks and the Benjamin Netanyahus of the world who will write our future, they do not determine our destiny. It's the hundreds of thousands of people out in the street who will build a world that is better. A world where humanity stands together. And it's Palestine who's given hope to millions around the world. That it's us, the people of the world, who hold the true power, who can take a stand against this Goliath that seems indefeatable, that seems like it's hell-bent on accumulating profits and destroying the world. But when the people come together and stand together, it will be defeated, even if it seems impossible. We've seen it happen all around the world. When the French left Algeria, Algerians say when they entered the house, the food was still warm. They entered their own homes again. The world might have told them to stop believing, to stop thinking that they would ever be back in their own homes. But they managed to defeat the colonizer. They managed to achieve freedom. Vietnam, nobody could have imagined America losing there. But they lost the war on the streets of DC. They lost the war when the people of America said they do not stand for that war. And when I see hundreds of thousands of people protesting for Palestine in America today, I see hope. I see change. It's when staff members of Joe Biden write letters saying they're against the policy of the government. When we see the poll numbers, we see a tide turning. We see change coming. Now is not the time to be hopeless. Now is the time to organize. Now is not the time for apathy. Now is the time to come together, to protest, to show the people, to show the powers where the people stand, to show the powers where the people stand. And if you look around the world, the people of the world stand with Palestine. Palestine will be free. Free, free. Palestine.